My girlfriend spent 2 years telling me I say yes too much, and then asked me to dog sit for a week. This requires a tiny bit of context. I am, by nature, someone who agrees to things. Not because I'm a pushover exactly, more that I just find it easier to say yes and adjust than to push back and deal with the fallout. My girlfriend Claire found this genuinely frustrating. For roughly 2 years, she made it her personal mission to get me to say no more often. You're allowed to have preferences. Stop agreeing with things you don't actually want. Just say no sometimes. It costs you nothing. She meant it kindly. She brought it up maybe once a month, sometimes more. She even framed it as personal growth, said it was something she admired in people who could do it cleanly without guilt. She was so consistent about this that it started to actually rewire something in me. I began to notice, then question, then occasionally decline things. Small stuff at first. I said no to a friend who wanted to borrow my charger for 3 days. I told my cousing I couldn't make it to his thing. It felt strange, but Claire was genuinely proud every time I reported back. Then in late February, her friend needed someone to watch her dog for 8 days while she visited family. Claire asked me if I could do it, and I want to be clear that I thought about it for a real amount of time. I considered the dog, the 8 days, the fact that I don't particularly enjoy dogs in my space for extended periods, and the 2 years of dedicated coaching I had received on this exact type of moment. Then I said no, calmly, without guilt, no long explanation, just, I don't think that works for me. There was a pause. Claire stared at me. I watched her go through several expressions in about 4 seconds. She started to say something, stopped, and then said, "That's not what I meant." And I said, very gently, that I understood, but that she had been a really excellent teacher and I wanted her to know the lessons had stuck. The dog went to a kennel. Claire has not brought up the saying no thing since February. AITA for refusing to take down a semi-nude painting before children visit my home. Background: I commissioned a large painting of myself many years ago. It's a reference to the Narcissus myth, so I am lying on my stomach, naked, looking into a pond. My breasts are not at all visible, since they are covered by my arms/hair/ just the nature of the pose. You also can't see my butt, it's just the hip area. So while it is technically nude, you just see arms, side, hip, legs, and feet. I have this hanging in my living room. Context: my immediate family is all very Catholic, except for me. Each of my siblings has 5 children, all under the age of 10. My brother texted me a few weeks ago to make a plan for Easter, since our sister was going to her in-laws. I offered to host at my house, and he accepted. Last night, he texted me saying our parents had mentioned I have the painting up in my living room, and he asked if I was planning to take it down when they come over. I said no because I had left it up when my sister had visited with her kids a few weeks ago, and no one said anything. He then asked if I would take it down, and I said no. Then he asked why not, and said some things aren't appropriate for young kids to see. I don't think it's inappropriate. It's not pornographic or sexual. Sure, it's technically nude, but many works of religious art have the same or higher level of nudity. I said as much to him, and he said that he doesn't believe it's appropriate for his kids to see, and if I won't take it down, he's not coming. I'm thinking of just telling him, fine, don't come, but I'm not sure if I'm being unreasonable. So AIDA if I refuse to take it down? Edit: I really was not expecting this much engagement. I appreciate the various perspectives offered here, and while many of you said, your home, your rules, I have offered to cover the painting while they are visiting. My friend stayed overnight. Parents told us don't wake them up for anything. When I was about 7 years old, my best friend came to stay overnight on the weekend as usual. Right before bed, my parents told us to not wake them up for anything. You got it, Mom and Dad. So our festivities included the ultimate 90s kiddo experience, video games and snacks, until our eyes couldn't be held up anymore. My friend's snack choice happened to be an entire box of cheese, which apparently he was not built for unbeknownst to the both of us. That was, until he gurgled up saying, "I think I'm going to be sick." And sick he was. Over half of the futon we always dragged out for him was covered in orangey clear evidence of a great night overindulging on that crispy salty square. He curled up in the only spot that was left for the last time that the futon could provide. My parents only had this to say, "Why didn't you wake us up? We could have cleaned it and saved the futon." I never saw my friend eat Cheez-Its again. AITA for asking a woman at work to stop being so weird about taking a caramel. I like to have snacks in my office, and I enjoy having something for people to take when they come in for a visit. I have a container of chocolate caramel thins open for anyone to take. The problem is that when many of the other women in my office take one, they do this whole song and dance. "Oh, I should know it's so bad, oh, but I just love chocolate, oh, it's so naughty." Stuff like this just annoys the crap out of me. Take a candy or don't. But don't force me to participate in whatever weird self-deprecating thing you're doing. especially calling it naughty, like you're scolding a child. I always just smile blankly, and they will look at me like I'm supposed to give them permission. I finally had it yesterday when one of the women stood in my doorway and pointed and was like, "Oh, I love those caramels. They're so good." But I shouldn't. "You're so bad for having these." I said, "Can you stop doing that? It's making me uncomfortable." She pretended to not know what I was talking about. I said, "Are you okay? You come in here and you act like you need my permission to eat a piece of candy. You keep calling it naughty like you're a little kid. It's super weird behavior and makes me feel uncomfortable, so please stop." She gave me a weird look and said she was just being silly, and never mind. She left. I found out later on that she said I ripped her head off and warned one of the other women who's always doing all that, "Oh, I'm so bad" crap to avoid getting candy from me unless she wants to be scolded. I'm not going to stop having candy out, because there are some people who can do it without the whole song and dance. But am I really the asshole for just asking her to stop doing that? "Oh, I'm so bad, oh crap." Edit. Okay, I am clearly the asshole. I will take the caramels home with me today, so I don't have to put up with this gross, self-deprecating humor thing anymore. I thought I was doing a nice thing, but I can't deal with the drama from the people with body image issues. I don't think it's fair they bring that into my office. So I'll just take them home. To fool by arguing with my friend that Freddie Mercury was straight. Okay, in my defense, I grew up in a conservative town and was really sheltered by literally every adult except my parents. I moved to California and told one of my new friends I thought it was kind of funny they called Freddie Mercury the king of the gays in a video they had sent me. They asked why. I said, "Because I notice a lot that really flamboyant singers, mostly guys, are called gay just because they dress in more unusual ways." They got quiet and said Freddie Mercury was gay. I knew he had a fiancée who was a woman, so I disagreed. One very quick Google search later, and I learned Freddie Mercury was not in fact straight. My friends will not stop making fun of me. They're so nice / But yeah, TLDR, I thought Freddie Mercury was straight and just called gay cause he's flamboyant, like Elton John or Harry Styles, and arguing about it, and now I'm being made fun of by my friends. I'm watching Bohemian Rhapsody the movie right now. Jesus Christ, I'm learning a lot. AITA for lying to my family about how much money I have. For context, I'm 19F and grew up in an extremely poor family with my mom, aunt, and grandma. We are a very small family, and although things have moderately improved, everyone is still lower class. I went to uni at 17 and started receiving student loans. My aunt started asking me for loans regularly. While I lived with my mom, I paid around $400 a month for rent and helped out with things like car insurance. I had to move out at 18 due to constant arguing and strains on my mental health, and since then she has also occasionally been asking for loans. After I moved out, I got a part-time minimum wage job to help with the rent and my car. And while I'm not great at saving, I've been trying to put away small amounts each month with the hopes of saving for a deposit on a house. At one point, my mom confessed to me she had maxed out her credit cards, and I ended up emptying my savings, both helping her and giving my aunt loans of $200 plus at a time, some of which I never saw back. After this, I told them I wouldn't be able to help them so much anymore. Except recently, they ended up back in exact same situation. I've replenished a good amount of my saving, but after a long talk with my grandma, who has also been giving them loans, she urged me to keep my savings private. So for the last 6 months, I've still given them smaller amounts, telling them that's all I can afford. Last week, my aunt was helping me with something on my laptop, and I had left open a statement from my savings account. She blew up at me over lying, and when my mom found out, she did the same, saying if I can afford things like my tattoos, the club, and other non-essentials, then I should be able to afford helping my family out. Neither of them have talked to me for over a week, saying that I've turned my back on the family, so they can do the same. I feel so guilty, but I'm so tired of helping them out of a situation that they keep returning to. Am I supposed to never enjoy myself because they can't get out of debt? Am I just being selfish here? AITA for limiting the amount of time my son's girlfriend can spend at our house. I, 44F, have 2 kids, a 14-year-old and an 11-year-old. My 14-year-old has a new girlfriend, and we met her a few weeks ago. She's nice, but my son has been having her over more often, and it's getting to be too much. She's here like 5 to 6 days per week. I like her. When her and my son cool, they clean up the kitchen and don't make a ruckus of anything. But I like to be able to decompress when I get to my house with my family, and I have a right to do that. Over the weekend, I told my son that his girlfriend can only come over 3 days a week. I told him that anything more was getting too much for me. If they want to hang out after school more often than that, that's fine, but she just can't be in my house 6 days a week. My son thinks I'm being unfair, and my husband doesn't really mind her being around, but is with me on this because I do. Also, they're 14. It's not a necessity to spend 6 days a week together. Ida? My son has been kind of upset over my decision. I saw a friend in the market and I can't stop thinking about how she greeted me. The other day my husband and I, 57F, walked into the supermarket and there, in the produce section, I saw a friend who I hadn't run into for years. We know each other in a professional capacity more than a personal one, but we get on very well even though we never socialized outside of work. So I see her standing there, and I'm so happy. I exclaim, "Is that Dina Pisciati, not real name?" with a huge smile. She turns around and it takes just a minute for her to register my face, and then she comes in. I thought we were going to do a friendly hug and a little squeal of delight, but no. She grabs my shoulder and pulls me into a hug. Fully pulls me in and hugs me with a huge smile and a huge embrace, and then pulls away laughing and smiling, and then pulls me in a second time. I don't think I've ever been hugged like this in my life. I've never been surrounded by such genuine joy and happiness to be seen. It was completely sincere and filled with joy. We stood there for a minute catching up, introducing her to my husband, excited small talk, and left with plans to meet for lunch, which we have scheduled for next week. I cannot stop thinking about that hug. Again, no one has ever done this for me. Not my parents, siblings, husband, other friends, no one. It felt like pure acceptance and happiness to be seen like a long-lost family member. It was wonderful. My ex-roommates mocked me for wanting to lock the door, so I stole a potato peeler from their unlocked apartment. In the summer of 2020, I, then 20F, moved into an apartment with Joel, 24M, and Sadie, 23F, who were best friends with each other and acquaintances of mine from school. It was my first time living outside of my parents' house. The apartment was in a really sketchy area of town. The cops were there multiple times a week, and we had items stolen from our vehicles. This was the best apartment we could afford since we all paid equal rent. Joel was a medical student from a wealthy family, but Sadie and I were both earning well below the poverty line. A constant fight between my roommates, and I was overlocking the door. They would leave the apartment completely unlocked whenever they left. I repeatedly asked them to please keep the door locked when nobody was home since my laptop and other valuables were in the apartment. I needed my laptop for work, but could not afford to replace it if it was stolen. Every time I asked this, they totally brushed me off and implied that I was being stupid or overly anxious for wanting to lock the door. I was teased and ridiculed for this request on multiple occasions, and they never respected my wishes. They said that if anything got stolen, we could just replace it. I came home on many occasions to an empty apartment with the door unlocked. They were okay roommates other than that, but this was a recurring point of tension. After a few months of living with them, I moved into a different apartment in the same complex with my friend, Maggie, 20F. Maggie and I were very much on the same page about keeping the door locked. We remained relatively cordial with Joel and Sadie and occasionally said hi in the parking lot, but we didn't hang out with them since they weren't taking COVID seriously at all. One evening, I was cooking dinner alone in my apartment, and to my dismay, our potato peeler was nowhere to be found. I scoured the whole kitchen and couldn't find it, and unfortunately, the peeler was essential to the meal I was making. I decided to go see if Joel and Sadie were home and willing to loan me their potato peeler. I walked over to their building. Our keys got us into any building in the complex, went up to their apartment, and knocked on the door. No answer. Then, something snapped in me. Though I knew I shouldn't, I tried the door, and of course, it was unlocked. I went into their dark, empty apartment, grabbed their potato peeler out of their kitchen drawer, took it back to my own apartment, and never said anything to them about it. 6 years later, I still have that potato peeler. Small revenge, but extremely satisfying. To foo by being constipated for the last 22 years. Obligatory, this wasn't today. Since my teens, I have had trouble going to the toilet to the point where I would bleed and be in pain almost every single time. I hated it. I would always anticipate pain and try to prolong the inevitable. But, as we all know, it don't take no for an answer. Things having been popping out that are not meant to make an appearance down there. I have resorted to haphazardly popping then right back in when in on the shower. During a movement, I would be straining to the point I would resemble Hellboy. Every single time. I tried many things to combat this issue over the years. Changed diet, drinking absurd amounts of water, exercise. For example, I introduced a lot of fiber into my diet, but that did nothing permanent. It just sporadically made the shit bullets have a lubricated and yet still painful exit. I would drink so much water that my colleagues thought I had developed prediabetes. I am not an avid runner and have read about that helping things move along, but it didn't change anything in the toilet department. So here's where I fucked up. I am not religious, but this year, for Lent, I decided to give up all bread products. No toast, sandwiches, pita bread, wraps, pizza, burgers in a bun. Everything. A matter of days into Lent, I was simultaneously delighted, embarrassed, annoyed, and elated with myself. By the second week, I was going to the toilet without the preconceived notion that I was going to rip myself open with a turd baby. And all it took was for me to stop eating so much fucking bread. Day 49, and I now pass bowel movements like a VIP breezing past the queue at a nightclub. No struggle, no drama, just straight through. Edit for clarification, yes, I went to the doctor. No, they didn't immediately think gluten issue and have a myriad of tests done. Don't ask me, I'm not a doctor. I have never linked the consumption of bread and this issue in my head, as I was not eating kilograms of it a day, people. Obviously, the doctor advised I look at my diet, introduce more fiber, etc., and it did help, but just not consistently. Even if I kept up the newly introduced fiber, I'm not eating bread again in a hurry. TLDR, pinching a loaf made easily by using less dough. Tofu by confronting my neighbor about his leaf blower and accidentally becoming a neighborhood legend. This is not a flex, I am mortified. Okay, so this happened this morning, and my hands are literally still shaking as I type this, so bear with me. For 14 months, I have been silently suffering. Every single Saturday, 7:15 a.m., my neighbor Dave, let's call him Dave because that is his name and I am done protecting him, fires up his industrial-grade leaf blower. Not a normal one. This thing sounds like a 747 is landing in his driveway. I have a 4-month-old. I work night shifts at the hospital. I am running on approximately 11 minutes of sleep. I kept telling myself, be the bigger person. I kept telling myself, community matters. I kept telling myself a lot of things while lying awake at 7:15 a.m. wanting to dissolve into the mattress. This morning something in me just snapped. I walked over in my bathrobe. My wife was saying, honey, don't, from the doorway. I didn't don't. I walk up to Dave. Dave is a large man. Dave does not see me at first because he is wearing noise-canceling earmuffs while operating a machine designed to cancel noise. So I just stood there, in my bathrobe, waiting for a solid 45 seconds while he blew 3 leaves from one side of his driveway to the other. He finally sees me, turns off the blower, takes off the earmuffs, looks at me, and before I can say a single word, he goes, oh hey, you must be the husband. Your wife brings the best cookies to the block association. Good woman. I blacked out a little. When I came back, I was apparently saying something about the Geneva Convention and acoustic warfare, and gesturing toward his leaf blower like I was presenting evidence in a courtroom. I don't fully remember it. I remember the word habituation. I used the word habituation. By the end, 3 other neighbors had come outside. One started slow clapping. Slow clapping. I wanted to die. Dave apologized and said he'd never realized anyone could hear it. His wife has been on him about it too, and he shook my hand and said I had real guts. I went back inside. My wife was crying laughing. Apparently she'd been watching from the window, and at one point I pointed directly at the sun as part of my argument, and nobody knows why. The leaf blower has not gone off. It has been 4 hours. The baby is asleep. I should feel good about this. I cannot stop thinking about the part where I said habituation. TLDR. Snapped after 14 months of 7 a.m. leaf blower abuse. Had a dissociative episode in my neighbor's driveway involving the Geneva Convention and pointing at the sun. Accidentally resolved the conflict. Received a casserole. Am not okay. Edit. This was Saturday. I thought you should know what kind of shape I'm in, pensive face. He said nobody touches the price tags without his personal check and presence, so we didn't. I used to work at a small retail place where the owner had this habit of making one big dramatic rule every time he caught the tiniest mistake. One week somebody printed a shelf label with the wrong promo date on it. Nothing huge, easy fix, took maybe 2 minutes. Instead of just telling us to be careful, he came in annoyed and said from now on nobody changes any price tags, promo signs, or labels without his personal check and presence. He said it twice because he liked hearing himself say stuff like that. We all knew this was stupid because he wasn't there half the time, and prices changed constantly. But fine. His store, his rule. I asked him right there what we should do if a promo ended while he was gone, and the old tag was still up. He goes, leave it. If I haven't checked it myself, and I'm not here, you don't touch it. Real clear, real confident. So that's exactly what I did. A couple days later, one of the weekend promos ended, and the old discounted price was still sitting on a pretty popular item near the front. Normally, I would have swapped the tag in under a minute and moved on with my life. Instead, I left it there, because I had very recently been informed that touching price labels without his personal check and presence was apparently a crime. People started grabbing the item and bringing it up front expecting the lower price. I explained that the shelf still showed the promo price and I needed him there to check and approve any label change. Since the tag was on display, we had to honor it for the customers who'd already picked it up. This happened again and again. By the time the owner finally showed up later that day, We'd sold a decent stack of them at the expired promo price. He saw the label, got pissed, and immediately asked why nobody had changed it. I just repeated his exact rule back to him. Nobody touches the price tags without your personal check and presence. You said leave it if you hadn't checked it yourself and weren't here. He stood there for a second like he was trying to find a loophole in his own sentence, then said, well, obviously, I didn't mean this. Yeah, I know. That's what made it funnier. After that, the rule quietly changed into use common sense and message me if it's a big one, which, amazingly, was the normal policy before he decided to perform management in front of everybody. AITA for being upset that my husband throws away dishes I forget to put away. I've always struggled with washing dishes right away, and sometimes they pile up in the sink. I usually end up washing them, but my husband hates this. A couple of weeks ago, he said that if he ever finds another dish in the sink, he's throwing it away in the garbage. There has not been a single dish in the sink. The rules have since changed too. If he sees any dish anywhere in the house unattended, it goes in the trash. I forgot a water cup on the coffee table the other day that's now at the dump. I used a knife from the $100 knife set to open a package and forgot it out. It's now gone. Is my anger unreasonable, or does this situation indeed feel childish? Forced to use AI at work. My work are pushing us to use AI as much as possible, so much so that they monitor our usage and pull people into meetings asking why they aren't using enough Claude credits. They keep saying that we should use it for anything that could save us time, but they can't see any of our prompts/chats. I do find AI useful, but managers don't understand that it can also slow me down in the type of work I do. I've started copy-pasting multiple choice questions from all the cybersecurity and other online courses they make me do seemingly endlessly. Literally takes me a minute to complete these now versus 15 minutes to 1 hour, depending on the questions. I copy them in separately and ask Claude to explain his answers in lots of detail. And oh boy, does he rattle through credits. Sorry, environment. A great time and mental energy saver, as well as keeping my AI zombie bosses at bay. Hope this post inspires others to never do a cybersecurity course ever again. AITA for picking up my stepdaughter from school when she got her first period, even though her mom told me not to. I, 24F, am currently 6 months pregnant with my first biological child. My husband, 28M, has a 10-year-old daughter from a previous relationship. He had her when he was 18. I love my stepdaughter very much and truly see her as my own, but I try to be respectful of boundaries and not get too involved in discipline. We mostly just have a good, fun relationship. Recently, something happened that has me second-guessing myself. My stepdaughter was at school when she called my husband saying she had really bad stomach pain. She went to the bathroom and noticed blood, and my husband immediately realized she had started her period. He was stuck at work and couldn't leave, and her mom wasn't answering calls at first. I was home, and I'm also on the school's approved pickup list. I told my husband I'd be happy to go get her if he wanted, since she was clearly uncomfortable. Then her mom finally called back, and things got tense. She said this was a matter between her and her real mother, and that it was a special moment she didn't want to miss. I explained that her daughter was in pain and would be bleeding all day, but she said, well, she'll have to tough it out and use toilet paper until I can get there. My stepdaughter was also saying the pain was too bad to focus in class. Her mom kept insisting she didn't want me involved and said something along the lines of, you'll understand when your baby arrives and you become a mom. Talk to me when your child has an important life event. That comment honestly stung. Then my stepdaughter called me crying, saying she needed pain meds. The school had given her pads, but she just wanted to go home and rest. Hearing her like that really got to me. My husband told me to go ahead and pick her up. So I did. I signed her out, took her to Walmart, got her ibuprofen and ginger ale, and brought her home. She took the meds and rested and was doing much better. About 5 hours later, her mom called absolutely furious. She said the school could have handled it, that my stepdaughter missed her after-school program, and accused me of trying to be a better mom than her. She also said we had an agreement about boundaries. I told her I wasn't trying to replace her, but that her daughter was in pain for hours and is now feeling better, which should be what matters. She responded with, you parent your kid, I'll parent mine, and hung up. Now I'm stuck wondering if I overstepped. My husband says I did nothing wrong and that he's glad I helped, especially since I understand what painful periods can be like. But her mom's words are really getting to me. Ida? To fool by saying to Natalie Portman that she looks a lot like Natalie Portman. I am now at the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam, and I just looked at a woman with a young daughter dressed in dark gray. She was without makeup, but she was resembling a lot Natalie Portman, so, since I like to compliment strangers, I approached her and said, sorry to bother you. Has anyone ever told you that you look a lot like Natalie Portman? And she said with a feeble voice, "Yes, I am. Thank you, have a wonderful day," and quickly but gracefully went away to avoid more unwanted attentions. Then I looked with my girlfriend recent images of Natalie, and we discovered that she was her. She also has a 9-year-old daughter. So, yes, TLDR, I wanted to say something nice to a stranger, and I managed to distress a famous woman enjoying peacefully her day with her daughter. My professor said any source is valid as long as I cite it properly. So I cited him. This was junior year, research methods class. Our professor, I'll call him Dr. K, had this thing where he would make bold claims during lectures without citing anything, and then get annoyed if students pushed back on it. Classic, I have a PhD, so my word is the source energy. At some point, he made a sweeping statement about consumer behavior that directly contradicted something I had read in 2 separate peer-reviewed papers. I raised my hand and mentioned this, and he said, and I quote, "In this class, any source is valid as long as you cite it correctly. The quality of your argument is what matters." Okay, I wrote my next paper arguing the opposite of his claim. My primary source for the counter-argument was a transcript I had made of his own lecture from 3 weeks earlier, where he had said something that, read carefully, actually undermined his newer position. I cited it as / last name, first initial, class lecture, course number, university name, date, / formatted exactly according to the citation guide he gave us on day 1. He handed back papers with written comments. Mine said, "Interesting argument, strong structure," and then at the bottom, "This citation is not acceptable, please see me." I went to see him. I brought the citation guide. I showed him the format. I showed him his own quote. I asked which part of the citation requirements I had failed to meet. There was a long pause. He changed my grade from a B+ to an A- and told me the citation was technically valid but in poor taste. I have never felt more seen by a grade in my life. The customer is always right about the delivery address, even when he is wrong. So I work as a courier for a local furniture and hardware supplier. Most of the time it is pretty chill, but occasionally you get that one customer who thinks being a jerk is a personality trait. Last Thursday, I had a delivery for a guy who ordered a bunch of heavy outdoor decking material. The address on the invoice was for an old industrial park on the edge of town that is mostly abandoned warehouses and empty lots. I called him when I was about 10 minutes out just to confirm where exactly he wanted the pallet dropped because the GPS was pointing to a literally gated-off gravel pit. The second he picked up, he started screaming. He told me that I am paid to drive, not to ask stupid questions, and that the address in the system is there for a reason. I tried to explain that it looks like a construction site or an old dump, but he cut me off and said he is a busy man and doesn't have time to hold my hand. He literally told me, and I quote, "Just put it exactly where the paperwork says and stop bothering me, or I will call your manager." All right then, I am a man of my word. I drove to the exact coordinates on the shipping manifest. It was a rusted gate in front of a completely empty dirt lot with a sign that said private property, keep out. There was nobody there and no building in sight. I checked my paperwork again, and the address was 100% correct according to the system. I unloaded the entire pallet of high-end cedar decking right there in the dirt, leaned it against the fence, and took a photo for the delivery confirmation. About 3 hours later, my boss calls me into the office. Apparently, the guy meant to put in his home address, which was on the other side of the city, but he had used his old business billing address by mistake. He was livid because when he finally drove out there to check, most of the wood had already been picked over by people driving by or was just sitting in the mud. He tried to claim I should have known it was a mistake. My boss just pulled up the recorded call where the guy told me to stop asking questions and put it exactly where the paperwork said. The guy had to pay for a whole new order because he signed off on the delivery terms. He didn't say a word when I saw him at the warehouse later to pick up the new stuff himself. AIDA for kicking everyone out after my sister lied and said my apartment was hers. I, 23F, live alone in a decently nice apartment, and I'm proud of it. My sister, Amelia, 20F, lives at home. We've always been very close, so I gave her a key for convenience and emergencies. Since I moved in about 10 months ago, Amelia has been coming over a lot. At first it was nice, but now it's almost daily. I work long hours and value my space and privacy, so this has been a little frustrating for a while. But I tried to be understanding because I know she really wants to move out too. Over the past 2 to 3 months, Amelia's been obsessed with my apartment and its aesthetic. She constantly comments on how she would decorate differently or suggests that we should move furniture around. I usually brushed it off as jokes. It didn't really start to get weird until I started coming to her in my apartment after letting herself in while I wasn't home. A few times I had noticed she rearranged little things. It bugged me, but I didn't outwardly confront her because it wasn't worth a fight with her. About 2 weeks ago, Amelia and I were at a mutual friend's party, and I overheard her talking to someone about her new apartment. And when I walked up, her friend said something like, "It looks nice from the pictures," which made me think she was showing people my place and telling them it's hers. A few days later, I came home early from work, and she was on my couch with a girl I've never met. Amelia looked obviously shocked and left quickly to go shopping. It happened again a few days later with our two cousins instead, but she didn't seem to care that I came home this time. I texted her later and asked her to ask me before inviting anyone over to my apartment, and all she said was K. After that, I assumed all was well. She was still over a lot, but she was acting oddly nice. I found this weird and was immediately suspicious, but from what I could tell, she wasn't doing anything strange. Boy, was I wrong. Last night, I came home after a 12-hour shift, and she was there again. But this time, with 5 friends playing a drinking game in my living room. I was exhausted and livid. I told them all to leave. Amelia tried to talk to me in the kitchen, but I wasn't having it. I told them again to leave, and one of her friends asked why I was there. In my apartment. I lost it. I yelled because I live here. Amelia lives with our parents, now get the fuck out. They left quickly, but my family is now saying that I embarrassed her in front of her friends. And Amelia is humiliated. I honestly don't think I did anything wrong, but my family is saying my sister is devastated. I'm not even sure what to do from here. I tend to overreact sometimes, but this was wild. And very out of character for my sister. Ada? AITA, my kids refuse to come to my wedding unless they can bring grandma. Edit. I'm going to offer to pay for a caregiver for the night. I will find the money, and hopefully it isn't too expensive. I divorced my ex-wife about 7 years ago. At the time, I was the stay-at-home parent, and my wife wanted to bring her old mother to live with us. It was a big argument. I didn't want her to move in because I knew that I would have to look after her and basically become a caregiver for her. I wanted her to go to a home. My ex-wife told me she was moving in no matter what since she is the one that pays the bills. That is when we got divorced, and I went back to work. I got every weekend with custody. I tired for more, but it's really hard when you don't have much money. Unfortunately, the care for grandma fell on my 2 oldest kids when they were with their mom. It was a long-running agreement between me and my ex-wife that was 7 years ago, and I am getting remarried. My kids are now 21, 20, and 18. They still live at their mom's and take care of grandma. I still see them most weekends. My ex-wife works long hours to support everyone, and so the care falls on them. I disagree with it so much. It doesn't help that my kids are bitter I divorced their mom, and they were forced into a care role. They love their grandma, but are burnt out. I've told them so many times they can live with me full-time, but they feel like they can't walk away because who would take care of grandma? I sent out invites to the wedding. They already knew the date, and I thought it was all good. I got a call from my oldest saying they need to bring grandma and needs an invite. I don't care for grandma. She was a royal bitch when I first met my wife and into our marriage. I told her that she isn't invited and my ex-wife can look after her for a night. My kids told me she can't since she will be working. My wedding is on a Saturday a year from now. She can watch her mother one night a year for him now. I told my oldest no, and their mom will need to figure it out. She then told me she will not come if grandma can't come. I reiterated grandma is not invited. We got into a big argument about it, and she told me I need to step up unlike what I did years ago, the divorce. I told her she is welcome to come, but grandma is not invited. My other kid have texted they are not coming if grandma can't.
AITA for telling my daughter I am disgusted by her, and telling her ex she has been taking their kid to his family side. Throwaway account, my daughter and Ryan, her ex, are 26 now. When they were both 18, my daughter got pregnant. They got an apartment together and started to raise their little family. They never got married, but Ryan's family pressured them to do it often. Multiple times I heard them say, those two need to stop living in sin. The issue was a year ago, when Ryan was caught cheating, and he is gay. The breakup was extremely messy, and in the end, the custody was 50-50. Ryan's family is really religious, and when it came out they were breaking, they were pissed. When they learned Ryan was gay, they disowned him. I was at my daughter's place helping her move out when I heard Ryan's mother call him a faggot. So his family is really shitty people. After he was disowned, for some reason, they thought he would give them access to the grandbaby. He basically told them to shove it. I know about this because they contacted me once to let them see the kid while I was babysitting. I told them no. 5850 has been a bit rough for my daughter. It is hard for her not to have her kid for major events. Example, Ryan had custody of the grandbaby during Easter, but he agreed to let my daughter have him that day so they can celebrate with my side of the family. My daughter was over to pick up some stuff and she showed me pictures from her latest weekend trip. In the picture, there was Ryan's mom and his 2 siblings. I asked what this was about and she told me that she has been taking the kid to see them for a few months now. I asked if Ryan knew. I thought they got back in contact, and she told me no. I told her that it was horrible to do, that they are bigots and disowned their kid. She got defensive, and it went into an argument. She defended taking her kids around homophobes, and I told her I was disgusted by what she was doing. I informed Ryan, he thanked me, and now my daughter's super pissed. Ryan apparently is refusing to be lenient anymore with custody. So more getting the kid on, not her day, even if my daughter wants them for some event?
Rude customer asked. Jack and received. I worked in a small-town convenience store in the Midwest many years ago. It was part of a chain based out of Ames, Iowa. One night, as it was getting close to closing, a customer who had finished pumping gas came in to pay. He immediately started saying that he wasn't paying for the last gallon of gas because the pump hadn't shut off properly. I looked out and could see a small, maybe 4 or 5 diameter puddle of gas, maybe 4 Oz worth. I informed him of all the signs informing the users that they were responsible for what they pumped. He got asinine and asked me what I was going to do about it. He refused to pay the full amount. Without saying a word, I stepped out from behind the counter, walked around the pizza cook, the only other employee there, who watched this all happen, and headed for the payphone next to the door. Mr. Furr. Asinine asked me what I thought I was doing, and I informed him that I was calling 911 for attempted theft. He told me to get back to the register and he'd pay the full amount, which he did while calling me every name in the book. I didn't respond, which made him even madder. Once the transaction was complete, he pulled a little notebook and pen out of his pocket and gave me a really snide look as he told me, "I want you to give me the president's address, NOW. Cue malicious compliance." "Yes, sir," I told him. "It's 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington, D.C. I don't know the zip code offhand, sorry." He is so mad that he doesn't realize what I've given him. He's just scribbling it down as fast as he can. Once he finishes writing it down, he closes his little notepad, pockets it and his pen, and tells me that I'll be hearing from the home office once they receive his letter. As he's walking out the door, I raise my voice and say, "Sir." He stops, turns around, and growls back, "What?" I answer as sweetly as I can, "Have a nice night." I could see the vein on his forehead pop up before he turned and stormed across the lot to his car. The pizza cook, who has watched the whole thing, tells me, "Dude, you're cold." "Which part?" I ask him. Telling him to have a nice night, that was cold. I had to explain to the cook what the address was that I gave Mr. Asinine. He had completely missed it. I've often wondered how far that guy made it before he realized what I had done. Still tickles me over 30 years later. AITA for wanting to eat meat on my vacation? I've been a vegetarian, mostly plant-based, for 8 years. I do it because I love animals and don't want to eat them. I used to love meat, so it was very hard at first, although I have gotten used to it. I also don't judge or really care at all what anyone else eats and will cook or serve meat for close friends and families for special occasions even. My partner is vegan and he teeters on being annoying about it. Like whenever I have family over for a BBQ and cook burgers, my mom does buy the meat, he gets mad, even though I bought a whole separate grill. We are going on a 3-week trip in the summer to the Mediterranean. I've always said that if I were to go on a special trip, I would eat whatever I wanted. I was talking to my sister about it, not even him directly, because I knew he'd be annoyed, and he overheard and practically yelled at me that I'm betraying the animals and my ethics, blah blah. And that might be true, but I think I deserve to splurge a little after 8 years of self-control, lol. AITA for wanting to eat meat on this trip. So many fishing tests. My company sends an inordinate amount of planned fishing tests to us employees. If any employee fails a test fishing event 3 times, it's immediate termination. No arguing or appeals. Many of the emails are designed to look like they come from the home office. For example, if our HQ domain is homeoffice.com, the phishing email may come from ehornoffice.com. To be the most compliant and ultra-safe, I have been tagging every email from the higher-ups as a phishing attack, even if I know the email to be legit. As a result, I have not clicked on or read an email from our CEO in about 9 months. How about one you have it manhandled? Hey all, it's no caps. OP still haven't figured it out. I had a deli customer come in today along with many regulars, as it is the witching hour and everyone's on lunch. I'm wearing gloves. I prepared most of the food the customers see before them, but sometimes in my haste in packaging their requests, my gloved hands make physical contact with their food, so in comes my least favorite guy. The guy who asks me what the Swedish meatballs are, and I say Swedish meatballs, and then he proceeds to say, because there's so much sauce on them, it's impossible to tell, like it's totally unnecessary. He literally puts too much sauce on everything. Not that I can judge him, but anyway. Saucy comes in and asks for 4 tenders. I have like 12 left and I'm doing the math. I know that the guy behind him gets 8 tenders minimum every day. As I'm bagging them with the tongs, when my fingers holding them, bag touches like one tender. He loses it. "Hey, how about you give me some tenders you didn't put your hands all over?" Enter MC. Before he can interject any further and go to the next customer. "Hey, what can you get while waiting for new tenders?" "Oh, give me the rest of those." "You got it, Chief." Then other guy loses it as I toss his manhandled tenders aside and tell my manager, Sophie, to start a new batch. I told Saucy that, "Don't worry, I won't touch these ones. That's not what I meant." The MC battle cry of defeat. He waited 13 minutes for new tenders. TL Deer made a guy new tenders. Manager said to document everything, so I did. This happened at a call center job I had a few years ago. We had a manager, I'll call him Derek, who was very fond of saying document everything whenever there was any kind of dispute or miscommunication. Paper trail, he'd say. Always have a paper trail. Derek also had a habit of giving verbal instructions that contradicted what was in the written procedures. Small things mostly, like telling us to skip certain steps to handle calls faster, or to process refunds in a way that wasn't quite by the book. When you'd ask him to put it in writing, he'd wave it off and say, "Just do it, I'll back you up." After the third time I got flagged in a quality review for following Derek's verbal instructions, I started documenting everything. Every time he told me something verbally, I would send him an email immediately after saying, "Just to confirm, you're asking me to do X in situation Y. Let me know if I got that wrong." He always ignored those emails. Never confirmed, never corrected. After about 2 months of this, there was a bigger issue where a process I followed, again based on his verbal instruction, caused a problem that got escalated. Derek said in the meeting that he never told me to do it that way. I forwarded the email chain, 14 emails. All sent within minutes of our conversations. All ignored by him, time-stamped, with no correction ever sent. The meeting got very quiet. Derek said the emails didn't reflect the full context. His manager, who was also in the room, asked him to walk through what the full context was. He could not really do that. I kept my job. Derek was moved to a different role about 6 weeks later. I still send follow-up emails for everything. When I wrote my dad's obituary, I didn't mention my mom and exposed her years of abuse and neglect. I originally posted this in Petty Revenge, but it was removed, so I'm guessing it's more appropriate for here. My dad died December 1, 2022. He briefly lived with me before his passing, after a long stint of being chronically ill for the past 15 plus years. As his health declined, he relied more on my mom for things. Prior to this, she was never a great person and fully took advantage of his disability and mobility issues as he declined. For years, she claimed to be separated and divorced, talking to other men on the internet. She made claims many times she was going to move away and marry someone else. In addition, she took advantage of him financially. We tried every legal avenue we could find to have her kicked out, arrested, or force her out. But those attempts were met with responses that it was a civil matter and there was nothing that could be done. He made me durable POA and added me to all his accounts. This is a small portion of her abuse, but I promise her actions were no less than neglectful and exploitive. I'd tried for years to get my dad to move in with me, but he wasn't leaving the house he worked so hard to pay for. I brought him home on hospice the day after Thanksgiving and made sure his final days were the best they could be. After meeting with the funeral home to carry out his final wishes, I was told they required consent from my mother to allow me to cremate him. It was no surprise she initially told me no, and only agreed after I allowed her to keep the Social Security survivor benefits, which would have been hers anyway. I wrote his obituary and left her out of it. There was not a single word or mention he'd ever been married or had a spouse. I didn't feel she deserved to be recognized or viewed as a grieving widow when she spent their marriage as a shitty spouse in person. She lost her mind, and there were many questions from friends and family alike. I've spent years in therapy working through maternal narcissistic abuse and believe if she didn't want me to talk about it, she shouldn't have done it. When people asked about it, I was honest about the years of abuse my father and I endured from her. I've completely ruined the public image and victim complex she spent years creating. I might be the villain and AH in this scenario, but I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Some like it hot pepper. Reading a recent stolen food PR reminded me, I too have a similar life experience to share. True story. I had taken AR and AMP winking and laughing internship for a food company over the summer in Keokuk, the armpit of Iowa for those unfamiliar. For housing accommodations, the company had set me up in the local college dorm that was previously a retirement home, so it basically had individual rooms and bathrooms, but one large commercial kitchen. It was summer and the school didn't have a summer program, but allowed 2 fall students to move in at the beginning of the summer. One was rarely there, but the other was constantly in the building and oftentimes had multiple friends over. Given the kitchen setup, we all stored our food there, and it's a pretty no-brainer you shouldn't take from others. But immediately, I had various food items going missing or being consumed regularly: sodas, empty boxes of cereal put back on the shelf, etc. I initially posted a sign on the fridge to not eat others' food, and also confronted both about having food go missing after the sign was up, but it didn't stop whomever from stealing my food, particularly when I'd head out of town for weekends. After complaining about the situation to my manager during my job, they helped formulate the perfect pro-revenge. Given I was doing R&AMP winking and laughing work on food products, I was responsible for getting various ingredient samples to use for new recipes. My manager suggested I get some capsaicin extracts for my research, even though we weren't doing anything in that realm for flavor profiles. Well, I found a company that had various Scoville unit extracts, and I asked for a variety to see what worked best for our applications. Well, did they deliver with some small 2-ounce bottles of 50K, 100K, and 250K Scoville extracts. I ended up putting the 250K in a travel-sized spray bottle, mixed with some water to help as a carrier, and wearing gloves and a mask, borrowed from work. Doctored the common food items being stolen with a liberal spraying of my mixture, mainly cereal, chips, crackers, jug of milk, and the lip/top of a few soda cans. For the snacks, I actually put some into a separate bag and left them open to dry before mixing back into the original packaging. I did this in a different dorm room in my wing, as I know well enough how potent this can be in enclosed spaces. I did this right before another trip out of town, and when I returned, I found some of the chips and cereal, and milk was missing plus 2 of the 3 cans of soda I had doctored. I never got to see the result, and no one ever said anything. But none of my food went missing for the remaining month of my stay. I hope the experience was enlightening for them, and they still remember the time they played with hot pepper fire. Boss tried to sleep with my fiancée. This was several years ago. So my boss, an extreme type A personality, found out I was seeing a young lady at another one of our offices. It was a long-distance relationship. He was the type he liked to control everything and mess with people for fun. He was also married to another employee, but he was very unfaithful. And he had a hobby, photography. He liked to take pics of himself and his conquest in the act. Then he would show the pics around the production floor and brag about it. Well, on his next trip to this other office, he tried to get my girlfriend to sleep with him, but she spurned him. He made up some lies and got her fired. It took a long time, but I was patient. I knew he kept the photos in his office. He could not risk keeping them at home where his wife might stumble upon them. One Saturday, I was working OT and a cleaning lady came through. They unlocked his office. I came in acting like I was taking dimensions on some drawings. The lady just asked me to close the door when I was finished. She left and went down toward accounting. That's when I went through his desk. Sure enough, in the back of one drawer, I found a stack of photos, 4 tall. I took them all. Then I waited until he went on another trip. When he did, I went out for lunch. I had a dozen pics of him, in the act with 4 different women, all showing his face. The women all had dark or red hair. His wife is a blonde. I drove to the town he lived in, to the closest post office to his house, and mailed the pics to his wife with no return address. She divorced him, and her lawyer took him to the cleaners. My girlfriend is now my wife, and we aren't mad anymore. Tiff you by telling my wife I was flattered by a compliment. Ampent, AmpNX 2000B, I am 37M and have been married to my 36F wife for 10 years, together for 13. She is far better looking than me and has admitted that she was not attracted to me for my looks and that I had other qualities that I checked off. I don't blame her, and that's not a surprise. Before meeting her, I had a lot of issues growing up being an introvert, shy to talk to women, conscious about my bad looks, etc. I was never a guy who women thought was good looking, and I was surprised someone who looked like my wife wanted to date and then marry me. I have started to look better as I've got older, but it's nowhere close to good looking. Anyway, we were at her sister's wedding a couple of weeks ago. It was a pretty small wedding, so we all got to know each other pretty well, her friends, etc. The day after the wedding, my wife's sister tells me that her best friend was clearly into me and thought I was super cute. Weird to hear that term as an almost 40-year-old. I thought it was a prank, but then she showed me a text from her. Obviously, I have no interest and intention of cheating, but I cannot deny I was flattered and it felt good. I told my wife a couple of days ago. I'm pretty open and honest with her about things and my feelings, so thought this would be okay to share as well. She immediately got protective and asked why I felt so good about it. I told her she knows how I have always been about my looks, and it just felt good for a moment to know someone thought I looked good, like I can't explain. When you go through life knowing people are not attracted to you, it just feels different when someone is. My wife probably felt threatened by this, and it has been a bit on edge between us since. CLDR. Told my wife I was flattered that another woman found me attractive. She did not take that well. Manager said to follow the checklist exactly, so I did. Every single line. I used to work in a small warehouse where we had a daily closing checklist that honestly no one took too seriously. It was one of those things that had clearly been written years ago and never updated, so most of us just did the important parts and went home. Recently, we got a new manager who was very big on accountability and kept saying we needed to follow procedures exactly as written, no shortcuts. He called me out in front of everyone one day for skipping a few steps that didn't really apply anymore, which was kind of embarrassing in GLL. So the next shift I decided, alright, I will follow it exactly. The checklist had things like inspect all emergency exits, which meant I had to walk across the entire building and check doors that are basically never used. There was also a step about testing backup lighting, which involved turning off the main lights in sections and waiting to see if the backups kicked in. This whole process took way longer than usual, and since I was doing it properly, I couldn't help the rest of the team finish up faster like I normally would. People were stuck waiting around because certain tasks depend on others being done first. By the time I finished everything, we were almost an hour past closing time. The manager was still there and asked why it took so long, so I showed him the checklist and pointed out that I followed every step exactly like he told us to. He looked pretty annoyed, but didn't really have anything to say without contradicting himself. After that, the checklist mysteriously got updated the next week, and suddenly we were allowed to skip half those steps again. Some coworkers said I was being petty, but I just did what I was told, right? You want me to escalate every time? Okay then. I work in customer services for my council, and because of the policies in my job, I have to be the bad guy frequently, as I have to say no to people, and frequently, people want to speak to my manager because of this. I always refuse to escalate because I don't engage with adult tantrums. Whether you speak to me or the CEO, it's going to be a no, so accept it now and move on with your day to avoid further frustration. I recently got a new manager, and a couple of weeks ago, someone complained about me for refusing to escalate the call, and he agreed with them and told me that in the future, I should escalate the call if someone requests to speak to him. I explained to them that I don't escalate because it's pointless, as they'll also say no too, as it's a policy. I explained that speaking to someone just to repeat what has already been said is a waste of both their times and that I don't want to contribute to this. I want a manager. View that people have, but he shut me down and told that whenever someone requests a manager, I must call him and see if he's free, and if he's not, I should email him their details and the issue, and he'd call them back that day. Cue malicious compliance. The second someone requested to speak to a manager, someone in authorities, etc., I called him and asked him to take the call, and the first few times he took it, and then he suddenly became less free and started telling me to email him the details and he'll call back later. Later started to turn into the next day or later in the week. I battered him with the multiple escalations that I would have ordinarily refused over these past couple of weeks. As I was in the office, I could tell he was getting stressed because I could hear him on his escalation calls, and it was clear that he'd bitten off more than he could chew with dealing with these escalations as the calls steered into them, trying to get my no turned into a yes by speaking to him. He was getting flustered and telling people he'd speak to the managers in the other departments, and then he'd have to call them back to tell them that he's looked into it and it's a no, as I told them already on my call with them. In a complete U-turn, he emailed me today to tell me that I can go back to dealing with escalation requests the way I want to, and if someone raises a complaint, he'll back me up. He went from, "you must escalate," to "please shield me" in the space of 2 weeks. Tiff you by thinking all of you were taking too long in the bathroom when, really, I had a stomach bug for over a decade. So my dad used to spend a lot of time in the bathroom, like he'd take WO books in with him. And in one traumatic memory, he once made me bring him my leftover birthday party Mickey Mouse napkins when he ran out of TP. No, not Mickey. Anyway, as a child, it left a mark, so I was determined to spend as little time going E2 as possible. Go in. Do your business. Get out. So that's what I did. I worked to develop what I thought to be strong control, to get it out in 5 minutes tops. With training and straining, I thought that's what I'd done, and it had continued into my latter adulthood. Especially in public bathrooms, I'd go in, drop one and leave, while shaking my head at the people taking so long to do what clearly was a much shorter operation. All these time wasters, obviously playing with their phones. Or so I thought. As part of a promise to get myself checked out after a family member's death, I went overseas, screw you American health prices, and paid for a lot of tests, including an endoscopy and a colonoscopy. Turns out I had H. pylori. That the doctor mused I might have had for at least for a decade, possibly longer. What's that cause? Among other things, irregular flows in the E2 department. To treat it, I got a very aggressive round of antibiotics. No big deal, I thought. I don't love them as they've caused me stomach problems in the past, which I might have taken as a sign, but I clearly didn't. But I saw it through to the end this time and finally beat the bacterial colony that apparently had a long-term lease in my gut. Since then, I am basically making wombat-level waste bricks, minus the right angles, and it is not the process I am used to. Occasionally, I've needed to use the handicap stall when available, just so I can have that wall handlebar for leverage. This is what you people have been doing with your intestines? This wool time? Well, anyway, I was wrong. And now I have the time to think about it, because I am clearly not going anywhere for a much longer portion of my day. TLDR. Thought I was great at going to the bathroom. Turned out the bacteria was great at going, not me. Edit, to be clear, not everyone is that bad, but more than a few are. Which, again, is proof that the bacteria have been covering for my less than ideal eating habits for a hunk of my adult life. Which is to say, yes, now, I'm also working on changing my diet. And I have time to think about that now as well. Metered on ramps. Back when metered on ramps were first installed on the main highway in my town in Oregon, the interval between lights on the ramp I used daily was 15 seconds. Cars would be backed up onto the adjacent feeder streets, and you could be stuck for 15-20 minutes on the ramp. Took a bit of research to find out that it wasn't the city or county, but Oregon Department of Transportation that controlled them. After repeated complaints and no action, I finally got the names of the two traffic engineers responsible for setting the light intervals. I made numerous voicemails, and finally had one discussion, but still no fix to the issue. Well, back in the day, early 2000s, we still had phone books, and both these engineers had listed home phone numbers. I got a 4x8 piece of plywood and painted an amp, lettered it, tired of these idiotic ramp lights, called the engineers responsible for them. Dennis MXX XXXXXXXXXX, Bill CXX 503 XXXXXXX, and let them know what you think. I stood with it on the side of the ramp for 2 days, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. The next day, I get a call from one of them, don't remember which, begging me to stop. I said, fix the fucking lights. You'll stop with the sign? Fix the fucking lights. Okay, the very next day. They had a survey crew out there in the afternoon to count cars, and the day after that, the lights were reset to 3 seconds between cars. Bottom line, when dealing with government, until those personally responsible are held accountable in a manner that inconveniences or scares them, they will continue to abuse the public, whether from negligence, incompetence, or malice. But bring it home to them, and they will grudgingly change their ways. Nasty facts form a lawyer. Part of my job is to answer FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, or APRA, access to public records and medical billing reports. An attorney in a neighboring state requested medical records for their client who we treated. The records were provided the same day. I pride myself on getting any invoices paid the same day or the next business day when I receive them. The same for APRA, etc. 2 weeks go by. I get a secondary request from the same attorney, so I faxed the records a second time and mailed them out. Today, I get a fax with a request for the same records with this in the fax cover sheet. This is the third request for these records. Okay, now, I'm rip shit. So I dig out the reports that were sent, compile all 3 bundles, run them through the scanner to get a count of the page amount, 49 pages. Perfect. I've now faxed that bundle out to them 4 times today, and will continue to do so until it is time for me to go home for the day. EDID. After this occurred, I found out that a coworker also sent these records out to the same attorney 3 times. And our contracted billing dept also sent the answer 3 times. Also, there's no charge for eDocs. Medical records aren't charged because they don't fall under APRA, and yes, 3 phone fax number is the same. When you can, you get the attorney's auto attendant. The fax chime sends it to their fax line. Got rude guy arrested for suspended license. This story takes place about 20 years ago. In the mid-2000s, my friends and I would frequent a small billiards place in a neighboring town where you could rent a table by the hour or play per game. We'd play a few games, watch whatever sports were on TV, and have casual conversations. There were no problems and no drama until about 3 months of us visiting this place. A guy shows and takes our spot at the billiards table. No big deal. We were all chatting anyway. 20 men. Later, my friend lets him know we want to play next game, and the jerk is super dismissive. Needless to say, we didn't get in during the next game, so I politely let him know we wanted to play next. Another lady chimed in. She wanted the game after us. The guy blatantly ignored me and the other woman. Some more time going by and the guy leave the table. We see our chance to get in. We put the quarters in and the balls are dispensed, except the green 6 ball. The guy took it to the bathroom with him. At this point, it was ridiculous, and we notified the manager. The manager noted it was 12,030 and they were going to be calling last call and closing, so we didn't want to make a scene by kicking him out. He gets us another ball so we can play. The guy comes out of the bathroom and knows we realized what he did. He smirks and proceeds to the patio to have a cigarette, bringing along his beer and the green billiard ball. The guy comes back in and tossed the ball he was holding onto the table, hitting a few balls on the table and messing up our game. He goes up to the bar just in time for last call. One of the friends I was with suggested we follow him home and each call the highway patrol to report a suspected drunk driver. 3 of 4 of us agree. So when he leaves, we used our trusty Nextel push-to-talk phones and coordinated several calls to the police. We provided details like license plate, vehicle make and model and color, and mentioned the car nearly hit another vehicle, was swerving between lines and driving erratically. This was under a 15-minute plan. We had no idea where the guy lived, but suspected it was close as he was visiting a neighborhood place, so our time was limited. The one guy who didn't notify the police tailed the jerk and called us giddy when a police officer pulled between him and the guy and turned in his lights to pull him over. The police blotter that week included an arrested of a guy who was pulled over after multiple calls of erratic driving. He wasn't arrested for DWI, but instead for driving on a suspended license. TLDR, guy was a jerk at a local billiards club, so we got him pulled over by the cops and he was arrested for driving in a suspended license. Grandma said follow the recipe exactly, so I did. At my grandma's place, sometime last year, she has those old handwritten recipe cards and doesn't like changing anything. I asked if I could adjust the salt a bit and she goes, no, follow it exactly. Okay. Recipe said 1 tablespoon of salt. I measured it out properly. Honestly looked like a lot, but I didn't say anything. But it in. Food comes out way too salty, but she takes a bite, kinda pauses, looks at the card again, but then at me. I said I just followed it. She just goes, well, you're supposed to use your head too. Really, next time she told me to just do it by taste. Tell me I have no choice, and I will comply. This wasn't me, but my dad. Back in the day, my dad was a helicopter pilot in the Army. On one deployment, they flew out to the National Training Center, NTC, in California. A troop had apparently arrived a day or two before my dad's, and they had a mission where they had to pick up a squad or platoon of infantrymen and drop them at coordinates X. However, as anyone who has ever used an old military topographical map knows, they were not updated frequently, so when they arrived at the prescribed coordinates, they found that the location marked on the map as an open clearing was overgrown with trees. So, not wanting to test the durability of their rotors against tree trunks and branches, they did what any sane person would do, and they dropped them at the nearest open spot they could find. As a result, the unit was late making a rendezvous at the prescribed time. So when my dad got the airfield and after landing, his troop was taken to a meeting room where, for 45 minutes, they got their asses chewed about putting people where they are told to put them. The pilots tried to explain the situation, but their logic fell on deaf ears. They were told, in no uncertain terms, that when you were given grid coordinates, you put them down there, period. End of story. Well, it would have been if my dad was not assigned the very next training mission. So, being the obedient pilot that he was, when he picked up his guys, he made absolutely sure that he had the correct coordinates. He verified with the platoon leader 3 times before proceeding to take off and place them at exactly the location he had been told and verified. After dropping them off, they were to go on a training flight. But 5 minutes in, they were ordered to return to base. Upon arriving back at base, his commander demanded that my dad show him where he put the guys down. He pointed to a location on the map that was well outside the training area. The commander asked why he put them there. So he reminded the major about the 45-minute ass chewing they had just gotten about having zero say in where to put them, and that he was simply following the orders exactly as given. Not much he could say after that. AITA not putting up my DIL's painting in our new home and telling her that I am not a fan of her art. It is 24x36. It's big. We downgraded our house. There is no place to put it that I won't see it every day. We have one bathroom, two bedrooms, one that is my office, the living room, and kitchen. The basement is my husband's workshop, and he doesn't like it either. I seriously dislike how she does portions. I don't like that the waists are tiny and the butts and boobs are huge. Not my type of artwork. I don't like it. I don't wish to decorate my home with art I don't like and have to see every day. If I gave her artwork, I wouldn't expect her to hang it up in her house if she didn't like it. Even if I spent months on it, because it is not my home. From comment. Pawn. My DIL has been married to my son for a few years and she has a side gig of making art. She has a habit of giving paintings to friends and family as gifts. I think most people like them, but for me, I am not a huge fan of her art style. I am much more a nature person than someone that wants scenes with people. Also, when she paints people, they are stylized. My husband and I bought a house and we have fully moved in. My DIL gave me a painting of someone sitting at the beach because she knows we like the beach. I don't like it. The woman in the painting looks off, her legs are too long and she is too curvy. I know it is her style of painting, but I just don't like it. At the time I got the gift, I thanked her for, and I thought that would be the end of it. I put the painting in the garage and kind of forgot about it. I bought an ocean painting for the living room. My DIL visited the other day because she wanted to pick up some of our old 4th of July decorations. Our house is smaller now, so we are purging decorations. We were in the garage and she saw her painting there. She was surprised and asked why it wasn't in the house. I told her I didn't have a spot to put it. She kept pressing and mentioned I got a new painting for her living room. I told her again that I don't have a spot for it. She then picked up the painting and said she could help find a spot. I told her no. She asked why not, and I decided to be honest. I told her I am not a fan of the artwork. She got quiet after that, and I gave her the decoration. I got a call from my son, and he was mad. He told me I need to apologize and hang up her painting. That his wife has been crying and it took her hours to make. I told him I'm not hanging it up, and that resulted in an argument. I need some opinions. I feel like it's my house, I can decorate it how I want. Told us not to turn off the power, unless he explicitly said to turn off the power, so we didn't. Childhood story time. From 30+ years ago, we lived in this old farmhouse for a couple of years. Mother wanted a better light source in the kitchen, so her boyfriend at the time volunteered to install a new light over the sink. Claimed he knew what he was doing. He told us children that we could turn off the power at the fuse box when he was ready to start. He was very explicit in his instructions. Don't touch the fuse box unless I tell you to turn off the power. Understand? Only flip the breaker when I say turn off the power. We repeated our instructions back to him and stated we understood. Flip the breaker when you say turn off the power. Got it. So he gets ready to start and calls out, turn off the lights. Well, the fuse box to the house is next to the light switch for the living room, and he'd been quite explicit about when to turn off the power. We kinda shrugged at each other and reached over to the light switch and turned off the lights. Lights are off, was our reply. Nice flash of sparks and some cursing. A few seconds preceded him storming in, trying to get all mad about getting shocked. Mother interceded and pointed out that he told us not to touch the breaker unless he said turn off the power, and asked him what he told us to do. He admitted to saying lights instead of power. He spent a few hours trying to wire the new light before giving up. Mom got an elder from church to come out and look at it. He fixed it in about 10 minutes. Tenant killed himself because we wouldn't renew his lease. We manage a property for an owner. He has owned the property since early 2000s and inherited a tenant who lived there since 2002. The tenant has been there for 24 years. The property owner never increased his rent once, and the tenant was only paying $475 a month in a town where a studio apartment can rent for $2,000 a month. The tenant was now 73 years old, retired contractor who couldn't work anymore, lived alone. He had been behind on rent multiple times over the years, but we always worked with him to get caught back up. This time, the owner wanted him to move out due to the fact that he was smoking cigarettes in the unit, impacting other tenants. He was also behind on rent again. This time we gave him a deadline to pay, or else he needed to leave. As the deadline approached, we gave him multiple reminders and he stopped responding to us. He was always communicative previously. On the day he was supposed to move out, he plugged all of the drains, turned on all of the water inside of the house, broke off matchsticks in the lock so we couldn't get in, and then shot himself in the head inside of the unit. By the time someone reported a leak, there was a foot of standing water inside of his unit. I keep looking for an obituary, and no one has posted it after a week. I don't know if he had any family that cared enough, unfortunately. He was an old man who likely just had no place to go. Burson EDDID. Burson EZDID. He was on a month-to-month lease for over 20 years. The owner could have ended the lease or raised rent at any time, and never did until the smoking complaints from other tenants began, in addition to the 6-month balance. He did not go through an eviction process, he just didn't renew his lease. I am devastated by the entire situation. To those of you in the comments saying they would kill themselves if they were me and saying I have blood on my hands, I really don't know what you expected me to do after we tried giving resources. But thank you for making me feel worse than I already do. Maybe I should have just let him move in with me? What options did I really have here, guys? Typhew, by not bringing gloves to AFB Marketplace pickup. I-19F was looking for a bigger TV for my bedroom, so of course, like any other reasonable human, I checked Facebook Marketplace. I'm at work, so the searching was on and off, and eventually I find a perfect condition, basically brand new Roku TV, exact dimensions I need, and only 70. Great, Bon. I contact the seller, she responds immediately. It's a deal. I go pick up the TV. Her baby daddy leaves it at the top of the stairs of their apartment complex. Weird, but okay. I grab the TV, take it downstairs, and test it with the outlet. Works great. I pay her. I pick up the TV and go. Except, I noticed there were weird streaks on the screen as I'm walking to my car. I put it in the trunk. Upon further inspection, I come to the conclusion it is dried semen that was ejaculated onto the TV and dripped down the screen. Wonderful. I just touched that. Gross. Anyway, after 3 rounds of vigorous scrubbing hand sanitizer, 2 hand washes, the entire happy birthdays, and 4 Clorox wipes later, I have a brand new Roku TV that doesn't have male reproductive fluids all over the screen. TLDR, the TV I picked up on Marketplace had semen on it. Well, edit, I'm not a semen expert. I assumed. A girl's gotta be cautious. AITA for ruining a hibachi dinner? I 52F and my husband 49M have been together for over 20 years. He has been out of work, but I make enough to keep us going. Last week was rough for me at work. I was initially blamed for something my predecessor did. It got straightened out, but there were a lot of meetings, calls, and emails, and I was scared I could lose this job. So Friday night, I just wanted a quiet night at home. My husband wanted to go to his favorite hibachi place. We don't go out to eat much anymore, but I was so tired. He kept pressing, saying, all you have to do is sit there and eat. So I said, okay. The hibachi place was loud and crowded, but being just the 2 of us, we didn't wait long and were seated with a boisterous group of 6. The chef came out. As he started cooking, he looked at me and asked if I was okay. I nodded and said, yes, I'm fine, thank you. He nodded and started bantering with the group of 6. A few minutes later, the chef again asked if I was okay. I assured him, yep, I'm good. He then said, you don't look like you feel good. I've been told that I have a resting bitch face, so I tried to smile and said again that I was fine. When the chef turned back to the group of 6, he grinned and then looked at me yet again, and this time said, are you mad? I was taken aback and said, nope. He mugged at the group of 6, and then to me he said in a comic voice, are you sure you're not mad? Are you mad at me? The group of 6 chuckled. One of the women in the group of 6 then said, oh, don't worry about her, she's just... Here's where I may be the asshole, because I didn't hear what she actually said after that. There was a burst of noise that, for me, drowned her out. All I know is that after she finished her sentence, the chef and the group had a hearty laugh while looking at me. I was feeling so beat up from the week, I was mortified to feel myself turning red and tearing up. So I told my husband to box up my food, because I'd be waiting in the car for him. I was getting out of my chair when my husband hissed at me to sit down and stop making a scene. I said, I'm not going to sit here and be made fun of. My husband said, nobody's making fun of you, just eat your dinner. I ended up sitting through the rest of the meal in the restaurant. The mood at the table turned very sedate. Communication became hushed voices and gestures. Nobody hung around long after the food was distributed, and pretty much everyone, myself included, just put everything in to-go boxes and left. In the car, my husband complained I'd ruined dinner. I asked him what the woman said about me. After the don't worry about her, she's just, and my husband would only say, it was nothing, and it wasn't anything to get mad about. I kept after him to tell me exactly what she said, and he finally admitted that he hadn't heard her either, but it didn't matter. It wasn't worth me ruining dinner for the whole table. Bye, Tia? You want me to use the exact script word for word? Absolutely. I worked in a call center for a home warranty company for about a year and a half. If you don't know what that is, basically people pay a monthly fee and we cover repairs on appliances and home systems. The calls ranged from totally fine to absolutely miserable depending on the customer and the day. Our team had a supervisor, I'll call Brenda. Brenda was very by the book, which is fine, but she had one specific thing that drove everyone insane. She was obsessed with the official call script. Every call had to open and close exactly as written, word for word, no variation, even if the phrasing was awkward or didn't quite fit the situation. A few of us had developed slightly smoother ways of saying the same things that customers actually responded better to. But Brenda kept monitoring calls and flagging anyone who deviated even a little. She pulled me aside twice in 1 week and told me to use the exact script, nothing more, nothing less, or it would go in my review. So I did exactly that. The closing script, written by whoever wrote it back in 2014 apparently, ended with the following. Is there anything else I can assist you with today regarding your home warranty plan or any of the covered systems or appliances included therein? Every single call. Word for word. Customers would go quiet for a second because it sounds like a legal document. Some would laugh. One guy asked me if I was a robot. The best part was a call near the end of my second week of full compliance. A customer said, "Did you just say included therein?" And I said, "Yes, sir. That is our official closing." He laughed for a solid 20 seconds and then asked to speak to a manager to compliment me specifically for being the funniest customer service rep he'd ever talked to. I transferred him to Brenda. She never mentioned the script to me again after that. Taifu by showing my 10-year-old a 90s TV series. To be fair, it wasn't the series itself that was the problem. Rather, the new version of streaming services that get spammed with ads and locked away behind more and more add-on services, and you have to buy everything and so on and so forth. So I did what all responsible adults do. I found a gray area streaming site that hosted the series I wanted to show my son. For all interested, it's Babylon 5. I did this before with another series, MacGyver, without any problems, so I guess I became complacent. Just a different site for this series, no biggie. Okay, every time you click on anything, play, pause, volume, etc., a new tab opens with an advertisement, but whatever. Most gets caught by my ad blocker, and the rest is for casinos and stuff. Until it wasn't anymore, and suddenly there is a full-on display of a young lady, spread eagle and fully engaged if you catch my drift. And I'm so shocked that it takes me 10 seconds of fumbling, and 3 more women in various states of showing the goods, before I get the grandiose idea of just pulling the plug. My son stares slack-jawed at the screen and then goes, "I don't even want to know." TLDR. My son caught a full-on view of the dark, or should I say naked, side of the internet, thanks to me being fed up with regular streaming. Well, everybody goes to therapy nowadays, right? AITA for planning a solo vacation without telling my husband? Backstory: last year, after both of us had saved for several years, my husband bought a brand new hybrid truck. We had discussed prior to this purchase that after this, our next big purchases, which we would start saving for, would be 1, a new car for me, and 2, a real vacation, i.e., not one that involves us driving back to our home state to drive around visiting family the whole week. This year, my husband's friend convinced him that he needed a dirt bike so they could go riding together on the weekends. I was against this, and when my husband repeatedly brought it up, what we had agreed upon when he bought his truck. Over the course of a few months, he wore me down, and I eventually agreed he could get his dirt bike. Of course, in addition to the bike, he needed all the gear, helmet, boots, pads, etc., and tools to take care of it, plus a new ring camera to have on the outbuilding where it's stored. This adds up to a pretty hefty sum. My husband is now planning a trip for this year to go back to our home state for his oldest brother's second wedding. We did not go to his first. Again, we had discussed a real vacation, specifically negating going back home for a couple years as we have already visited last year and we're going to save that money. I have now done something that I never thought I would do. I opened a savings account of my own, without his name on it, and I've started saving towards a solo vacation for myself since he is obviously more interested in spending our savings on other things. I haven't told him about the account because I feel that if he knows about the money, he will find something else to spend it on. I haven't told him about my plans to take a solo vacation because I feel if he knows about it, he'll try to manipulate my plans to fit something that he wants rather than what I want. AITA for not telling him my plans.